it's not what you've got, it's how you use it. A little bit of knowledge can be a dangerous thing. Wisdom is power, or knowledge is power, I should say. And anyway, I can't think of any other things to say about the effectiveness of being smart and efficient in your actions over the idea of just using brute force to get what you want, whether that's out of your environment or out of people around you. Anyway, that's all I have to say for this kind of kludgy intro. This is MJ. Welcome to MJ Loves Toku. I am here to talk about another episode of Kamen Rider Zero-One. This time we'll be talking about episode 3, which sees the debut of becoming Kamen Rider. I don't even know what her name is. She's not Kamen Rider Valkyrie, Kamen Rider Cheetah. I don't know, the Cheetah Lady. So I just checked. Yaiba Yua does become Kamen Rider Valkyrie. I know why I didn't remember that, because it doesn't make any sense. You've got the other guy who becomes, Isamu becomes Vulcan and Valkyrie. Okay, I just figured Vulcan because of the shooting thing, but I didn't really give it much more thought. So I'll have to think about that later on. But on to my 10 minutes or less review of this episode. I liked it overall. It felt like it was simultaneously addressing some issues that were brought up last time and setting up things for the future. Once again, I want to state the effectiveness of the Mitsubishi.net guys, how they're victimizing their AI, the Muggier. And I picked up on something this time that they call the evil ones just Muggier. I don't know. I'm looking at different subs, but I'm hearing it differently too. I am hearing Muggier, and I think that makes a lot of sense. Almost as if to say they're, malignant or something like that. Malefic, to imply evil, at least from, English or, Latin-rooted languages. But anyway, I appreciate that. Well, that poor car over there, I don't know what's wrong with it. Anyway, so I liked that. I liked the idea that the Muggier can be saved, sort of. Yuba ends up telling, Yaiba Yua. Dang, man, that name. Anyway, she ends up telling, what's his face, Aruto, that the Muggier can be saved by backing up all their data. And that's an interesting thing. People are thinking about backing themselves up, uploading their brains to machines and extending their lives, indefinitely. And I think, the question of what is a human versus what is a artificial intelligence and, can a machine have a soul? That's brought up and discussed in this episode. And it kind of, Aruto clearly thinks that they have souls. And he wonders why he's the only person who can see that. And, of course, doesn't mean he's the only person in society. It just means he's the only person among his circle who can see that. Which, now that I mention his sphere, does this guy know anybody out of Hedon Industries? That seems really weird that he doesn't seem to know anybody else. Doesn't seem to have any other friends or family, any other acquaintances or associates. That all seems very strange. Anyway, I have a larger point I want to focus on, so I'm just going to quickly talk about the fact that I like the Squid Muggier. I like how it was more detailed than the previous ones we've seen. I think this is probably the most detailed of them all. I guess it's about equivalent to the Mantis. The Mantis in episode 1 was the only Muggier we saw. This one was the main Muggier. The others were the corrupted Muggiers. And then in episode 2, we had the Bat and whatever the heck that other thing was. But we had 2 of them, so it looked like less work was put into them, or they were simpler. But this Squid one, they put a lot of detail in. And there were some cool angles that were shown in the fight. It seems like they're doing some different things with the directing, really mixing up the fight choreography and how it's shot and shown and things like that. So I appreciate all that. That's all good stuff. But the larger thing that I wanted to talk about, the thing that was more interesting to me in this episode was Yua. I guess I'll just call her that. She isn't like Isamu. She is not unhinged and wanting to destroy all Humagear. She sees them as tools only, and her approach to things seems to be one of calm, cool rationale, almost as if she's inhuman. She's a little Spock-like, I guess you could say, and she wants to use tools efficiently, and the Humagear going out of control to her is kind of like a machine. I don't know how many of you work with tools, power tools or something like that. It's like a motor going bad on something, or if you're using a cutting wheel or an abrasive wheel like that, chipping and the fragments can fly everywhere and cut things and cause injury. But really, it's the users who are at fault. It's the humans who have to decide how they relate to the Humagear by acting properly around them and protecting themselves. And gosh, it's a really interesting, nuanced thing, because while she says all that, she still treats them as if they're replaceable tools. And we see, I think his name is Iguro, is the sushi Humagear, and he ends up getting destroyed by her because he blends into the crowd. I also find it interesting that when the Humagear are corrupted, they basically become faceless. They all look exactly the same. And I mean, that makes them utterly dehumanized. They literally lose their human faces and become a part of a collective. And there's no distinction among them. Now, I can hear a part of me saying, oh, that's like kind of like, would that be jingoism? I'm not sure, but that's kind of like racism. Like, oh, this one people group all looks alike. No, if you know them, there's subtle differences, and maybe among the Humagear, they can recognize each other, but maybe they have some sort of, heads-up display that makes clear who they are to each other, or something like that, which I think would be interesting. But like from a just visual standpoint, because we are, human animals to some extent, and our psychology can be boiled down to, kind of a monkey see, monkey do type thing. I think the visual storytelling, the representation of Iguro getting lost, if that was his name, the sushi guy, getting lost in the crowd, and becoming, faceless, and literally their faces get covered with, they have like a wild, crazy face, a vicious face, and then that even gets covered with armor, further diminishing the distinctions you can see, because there's no expression on those, Muggier faces, or Muggier Mook faces. And gosh, I think that's really interesting. So that has to do with Yua seeing them as just tools, and that kind of contrasts with, or that clearly contrasts with Aruto seeing them as having heart and soul, and him feeling alone and seeing that. But it's interesting, again, because I think the truth is somewhere in the middle there, potentially, because the Mitsubishi.net guys, the Cyberterrorists, I'll just say, they only go and attack and victimize and use Humagear who have awakened. So, and I think in, Iguro we didn't really get to see. It's interesting to me, too, from a writing perspective, that they chose not to have Iguro, the sushi Humagear, be the one who was infected and affected. He wasn't close enough to awakening, I guess, but this barber one, who we know nothing about and saw nothing of, was affected, and that's kind of bizarre to me. Quick closing thoughts as I'm approaching my last minute or so of this review is that I wonder if Izu's going to be in danger of awakening and being attacked by the Cyberterrorist, because she's so human. We see her in the OP crying, but I would assume that close contact with humans is going to increase the evolution, the singularity, the awakening of Humagear, and that over time they'd just all become more human, or at least, seemingly. Their machine learning would cause them to seem to be more human. I critiqued one aspect of the writing, but one thing I'll praise is that there are, in like the workshop or whatever, extra Humagear bodies that look kind of differentiated, like those might turn into the other armors for, future Kamen Riders that we're going to see, and that seems interesting to me. Also, it's funny that Ames doesn't see that the Humagear, that their Kamen Rider armors look like Humagear with something extra added on top of them. And anyway, I'm sure that's a thing that'll come up later, but it's interesting to me that they're kind of, the show, like, it's not greatly written, but there are like little seeds and little things planted throughout or sprinkled throughout that kind of tell you the story of what's going on just by what you see, as opposed to the dialogue and action and everything. And we're only 3 episodes in, so who knows how that'll shake out. And then also this like robo-apocalypse, I'm calling it, that we see in the OP, where there's everybody's drivers in the rain collapsed, and there's ruin, and there's dead Humagear bodies and stuff all strewn about, is kind of creepy. And despite the fact that the show's had a comedic tone, I think that won't always hold true, and that's a little more interesting to me. So anyway, we'll see where it goes. But I've gone over my time limit, so I'm going to go ahead and stop. Check out mjmunoz.com for more of my work. I'm currently reviewing Spider-Man comics and writing original fiction you can find there. I'm also participating in Tokutember, making tokusatsu-inspired art for the month of September. I'm an aspiring author who will gladly accept your financial support through coffee. MJ Loves Toku can be found on YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and mjmunoz.com/mjlt. Relevant links are in the show notes. If you had a good time, like and share this. Subscribe and ring that bell to keep up with the latest in my quest to watch all Toku. Check out my Ultraman show, Going Ultra, and my other channel, Swing Through Comics, which I mentioned already, and where I review, you guessed it, comic books. That's all, folks. I'm going to check out of here. And remember, you don't have to yell henshin to be a hero.